Hey, it's Adrian Hernandez, 1140 The Bet. And I know Aces season is over. NBA Summer League is over and done with, but basketball is just starting here in Vegas. Very excited. Henderson, the G League Ignite their first season here. And Henderson, matter of fact, you can get your tickets at thedollarloancenter.com. Purchase single game tickets, purchase season tickets. The Ignite tips off their 2022-23 NBA G League season against the Oklahoma City Blue this Friday, November 4th, 7 p.m. at the Dollar Loan Center. So as the Ignite comes to Vegas, we need to introduce you to the whole organization. And we're starting off with the general manager, Anthony McClish joins us. Anthony, welcome to Vegas. How are you? How you doing?
Hey, appreciate it, Adrian. I'm great. We're excited to be here. How are you doing?
No, I'm doing good. I'm thankful that we got to meet you guys at the media day. I'm very happy that you guys are here in Vegas at the Dollar Loan Center, one of the I'm going to say the best venue in the G League, and I haven't been to all of them, but I'm just going to say that right off the bat. But before we get into some of the dynamics of the team and what you do and your responsibilities, just as we start the conversation for people that are listening and seeing your face and hearing your voice for the first time, if you could kind of give us a rundown of your journey that led you up to this point to being general manager of the Ignite.
Yeah, for sure. I started as a manager, student manager, when I was at Ohio State undergrad with the women's basketball team. Actually, was very fortunate to work for a
Go
Hall of
Buckeyes.
Fame. There we go. Oh wait, I'll get to another point on that later. But very fortunate to work with a Hall of Fame coach. His name is Jim Foster. I think he's top five, maybe for sure, top 10 in all-time wins. So really fortunate there. Worked with a number of really good college players, and then also some WNBA lottery picks. So started my career there. Really wanted to get into coaching. Actually wanted to go right from school and get a master's degree, continue to work in women's basketball. But such as life, doors open that are a little bit unexpected. And so I actually moved out here to Vegas for a brief time, 2 straight summers, to work at a training facility called Impact with Joe Bunazar. And they were fortunate to take me in. Did like a pseudo internship with them a couple years, and one of the years met some reps from the San Antonio Spurs, actually, Danny Ferry, Dennis Lindsay, and Brian Pauga. And they were playing a playoff series against the Utah Jazz up in Salt Lake. Came down to watch workouts, introduced myself, and ended up getting an internship with the San Antonio Spurs and during the 2012-13 season. And I was very fortunate and feel very fortunate to be there at that time, because there were an incredible group relative to both the coaching staff and the front office. So Greg Popovich, obviously, is the head coach, is still there. His assistants at the time were Mike Budenholzer, is now the head coach of Milwaukee, Brett Brown, who became the head coach of the Sixers, Ime Udoka, Taylor Jenkins, Will Hardy. Like, they were all on staff. It was an amazing staff. On the front office side, R.C. Buford, Scott Layden was assistant GM. He goes on to be GM of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Sean Marks, who's in Brooklyn. Trajan Langdon, who's the GM of in New Orleans. So a great group of people, some great mentors that as a young, 23-year-old coming into the NBA, I was very fortunate to be around that group. And then went from there to Sacramento. Actually, the president of the G League right now, Sharif Abdur-Rahim, hired me in Sacramento back in the 2013-14 season. And then over the course of 7 years, kind of grew organically, doing roster management, salary cap, G League, D League at the time, player development, college scouting, pro scouting. And then, through Sharif, ended up coming, Ignite launched a couple of years ago, just our 3rd season. So through Sharif, latched on with Ignite a couple of years ago, and then was named GM, about a little over a month and a half ago, maybe.
Yeah, that's awesome. And one thing I do want to ask you, because you bring up the Spurs, and obviously, like you said, you're an intern, you're joining this dream team from front office to the coaching staff to the players, and that's in the middle of the Heat Spurs rivalry, the kickoff the 2010s, and the NBA final back and forth with the big three with the Heat. I guess the one thing I do want to know with your time with the Spurs in that season and that year is, what's the biggest thing that you learned?
Well, I think. Great question. I think the biggest thing, and hopefully I'll explain this in a way that makes sense. The biggest thing that I learned, I think, is that success and leadership in a basketball context is very similar to that in a life context. And what I saw from Pop and what I saw from RC and Tim Duncan and Manu Ginobili were leadership traits and leadership characteristics that really had nothing to do with basketball. They manifested themselves in a basketball context. But the idea of people being comfortable with themselves such that they share information and are willing to lift others up and think outside of themselves and get over themselves for the context of the team. You know, these are things that transcend basketball, and they manifested themselves in San Antonio in a basketball context, but these are principles that are life principles, not basketball principles. And so, yeah, the tactics of the salary cap and lineup combinations and all of these things that are an on-court, reflected on court, the values-based foundation that I learned in San Antonio was something that was illuminating to me.
And being a general manager throughout your career, this is something that I want to know because it's an ongoing conversation that we have here on my show, that we have throughout the station, is when it comes to the general manager role. Granted, being a football GM and a basketball GM are completely different because you're going from dealing with 15 men to over 50. But
Yeah.
Plain and simple, would you consider yourself a friend to the players on the roster as a GM? Because on my side, I'll preference it like this. In some ways, I think that you can't be, because you're the boss and you have to make decisions that are probably going to be heartbreaking because it's just the nature of the job if you get close. So for you, what's your perspective on that?
Well, Ignite is a little bit different in that, we have some draft eligible players that I'm sure, we'll get into like the function of that later, but we have some draft eligible players that we're not going to cut, right? And they're not going to get traded and they're not going to get called up in that. So there is some consistency there, thankfully, in some of the dynamics that I don't have to deal with that I used to, back when I worked on an NBA team. But to answer your question, I think it would be a shame if I didn't try to befriend them. And I think, I'll just tell you what I tell the guys at the beginning of the year is I view my role as being responsible for providing our players and staff with every resource possible to optimize their development and performance. And sometimes that resource is providing support, providing off-court help, providing, if I can, mentorship. I mean, I'm not that much older than these guys. I don't pretend to be, but but that doesn't mean babying them, and that doesn't mean telling them everything they want to hear sometimes. And so I try to, as objectively and as empathetically as possible, give them all the resources that they need. Sometimes there are guys on the team right now that are here, thankfully, in my opinion, because I think we have developed a friendship. But that doesn't, we can't ever ignore the business. Like, we work in a business and we can't ever ignore that. But I think if we're upfront and transparent about it and professional about it, we can maintain that type of relationship even in the business context, and then carry it. These guys, we're not going to be employed with Ignite together forever. And so the idea is that we can be a little bit better together while we're here, and then have that be sustained long after our time together.
And for those listening and watching that don't know, not only is it the first year that you guys are here in Henderson, it's the first time the team's going to participate in the full regular season. And plain and simple, it's a first of its kind program for the league and for the NBA in trying this. So for those unaware, what makes the Ignite such a unique team and organization in the G League landscape?
Yeah, it is truly unique. There's no other professional sports or I think, in my opinion, like amateur sports team like Ignite, in that we allow players at an age right now to be professionals that they can't, is not replicable anywhere domestically in the United States. And so the idea that someone like London Johnson this year, Scoot Henderson last year, Babacar Sane this year, can become pros and turn pro and get that development and competition and professional cadence, like you said, a 50-game G League season, which, if for those viewers that, are unfamiliar, half of the NBA has come up through the G League. I mean, the numbers, like the growth of the league is incredible, especially over the last 5 or 6 years. So,
Jordan Poole.
I mean, there's so many examples, right? And we had a guy when I was in Sacramento named Gabe Vincent, who was just an incredible success story. He's an incredible person, undrafted, no pre-draft workouts, no summer league invites, right? And then last year is starting in the Eastern Conference Finals, right, for Miami. I mean, there are incredible stories all over the place, and that's what makes it so rewarding to work in the G League, because you get these guys that are incredibly talented at a point in their career and at a point in their lives where there really is a mutually beneficial relationship that you can build, and support that you can give them that is meaningful, extremely meaningful. So I think, what we try to do is we try to do multiple things at the same time. We're trying to develop these guys. We're trying to compete. We're trying to again, provide them the resources, want to make sure to develop professional habits, give them support, give them programming, give them education. And all of that in a professional lens is unavailable anywhere else besides Ignite.
And one of the things I do enjoy, and you even named them in a couple players that are on the roster for this season, is that it seems like in the fabric of the Ignite, not just in this season, but in previous seasons, is that there is an international flavor that is rooted in the roster, from India to Canada to Africa to Europe, all over the place. So I guess my question is, from your perspective in the front office and the scouting department, like, what's the game plan or the method to be able to literally look worldwide searching for talent, not just in this country, but throughout the globe?
Obviously, obvious statement of the day, like there's an incredible talent pool globally, not only with the players, but with league personnel and with evaluators, right? And so it would be a shame and it would be a completely missed opportunity if we didn't acknowledge that and try to leverage that. And from a basketball standpoint, it pays dividends, whether that be a Dyson Daniels that we had last year or a CD Sissoko this year. And then just, I think from a life perspective, again, connecting basketball to just what we're doing on a daily basis, like to have an infusion of culture and a diversity of background, culinary preferences and behaviors and mindsets and upbringings. That just adds, not only does it add on the court, these guys are bringing their own training that, they might have gotten in an NBA academy or from, maybe one of their national teams. They're bringing that here, but they're also bringing their families and they're bringing their upbringings, they're bringing their worldviews. And I think to have that dynamic with Ignite, especially for young players, I think to be around that is going to pay dividends for them for a long time.
And I guess it does help that you're in Las Vegas, where everyone from everywhere is here. So there's a little bit of everything everywhere. One thing, I do want to ask you, and I just thought of it while you're talking, is what's the balance that you have running this organization of knowing that, these players are coming here to go up against the best players in the world before they get into the NBA, and you managing, trying to put the best foot forward for not only them in their careers, but also the organization as well?
Well, it goes back to, we're trying to do a whole bunch of things at the same time. And sometimes on the surface, those would be or seemingly be competing values, right? When you work in professional sports, right? When I was working with the Spurs or working with the Kings, our goal and timelines are varying, but the goal is to win a championship, right? Your goal is to have individual players maximize their performance in a team setting to win as many games as possible. For the most part, the rebuilds and whatever aside, but it's relatively straightforward. That doesn't mean it's easy, but it's relatively straightforward. With this, we're trying to align development, competition, short-term goals, long-term goals, habit building, results. We're trying to do all those things at the same time. And it's not impossible. And I tell the guys, again, at the beginning of the year when I address them and say the same thing to our staff, we're not going to shy away from that. It's really difficult, but everyone here, players and staff, are accomplished, very capable, and we're going to work together. We're going to do those at the same time. And the really cool thing I think about Ignite, again, now in its third season, we've had proof of concept with these guys. We've had 100%. We've had players drafted highly. We've had players play at a high level in the NBA. We've had players not drafted whose learning curves have been shortened because of their time with Ignite and are now on multi-year contracts. And so we've proven to be able to do it. Now we have to, again, in a professional lens, we have to do it, and we have to do it again, and we have to do it again. And we're not going to shy away from that. And we believe that we have the right group, the right support to be able to accomplish that.
General Manager Anthony McClish joining us here on 1140 The Bet. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask. I do have to say, hell of an entrance to make your way here to Vegas, having the Mets 92 come and play, as the basketball world was literally either in the building or watching. So to have Scoot go up against Victor and just all the talent that was on the court for both teams, how long was the process of making this possible?
Well, there was planning that went into it for sure. Yeah. Something like this doesn't just materialize, but, we're very grateful to the Mets and their entire player and staff. They sacrificed quite a bit. They were already in season, and showed some flexibility, and I think bought into the vision that Sharif and the league had, and Ignite had for this, for that week, really. You know, there were 2 games, but there were some other activities that week. So we give them a lot of credit, and we thank them for being willing to be flexible on their end, buy into it. And, you know, like you said, whether it was NBA personnel, fans, media, our players, I think everybody had this collective appreciation for, like, wow, this doesn't really happen that often. And now that we had an opportunity to take advantage of it. And again, credit to both groups for buying into that.
Are we, I don't want to put any names or any teams specifically, but is this something that we could see again in the future with international teams coming to town?
I think, you know, again, the nice thing this year, you know, very thankfully, we're getting through the pandemic, right? I mean, this, you know, something like this, you know, the first year of Ignite, we were bubbled up in Disney World. So I think we would be remiss to not try to take advantage again of the global environment of basketball and the unification that can be achieved through basketball. And so, yeah, I mean, I think we're going to try to leverage all the resources and relationships globally within the sport that we can.
And my last question here, pretend I am a top level recruit that you guys want me to play for the Ignite. And of course, the landscape has changed. I can go to college right now and get an NIL deal, this, that, and the third. What's the pitch to players, and why do you think that if you're trying to make it to the NBA and be successful, and that's your goal, to have a longevity in the NBA, why is the G League and the Ignite the team to go to?
Well, I mean, it's a long list. I think at first I would say this program is not for everybody, and we don't shy away from that. It's a difficult environment. It's a difficult path. It's harder than college, but what I will guarantee every single player who commits to us is you will get out what you put in, and you will be better for it. Again, there's nowhere else in the world that at this age and in this kind of time in your life can you get exposure and competition and development and resources of the NBA, of professional basketball in the United States. It doesn't exist. And if your goal and your mindset is, I'm a pro and this is important and I want to be as developed holistically as possible, that includes off-court business of basketball, financial literacy, relationship building, NBA mentorship, as well as the on-court competition. You're not going to get that anywhere else. And in the truest sense, if you believe in your mind that you're a pro, we're going to support you and we're going to develop you as such. And it will be the most accelerated and prepared that you will be going into achieving what for many of these guys has been a goal of theirs for a decade or longer in, you know, shaking Adam Silver's hand on draft night come June.
And for us in Vegas, we finally get to see that progression live in person. The Ignite tips off their 2022-23 NBA G League season this Friday, November 4th, 7 p.m. against the Oklahoma City Blue. You can get your single game and season tickets at $1loancenter.com. Anthony, it has been a pleasure. Welcome to Vegas, and thank you for joining us.
I appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing everyone soon.